It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And this Wellness Wednesday, we're talking about distress tolerance, because that's going to be something we're all going to need for at least the next 4 years. A lot of people have been really struggling with some of the Trump-related stuff and a lot of the Elon-related stuff. And, you know, if I wanted to game the YouTube algorithm, I deal with Elon's awkward gesture, but all my brain went to as a cope was there's an ongoing thing in A Court of Thorn and Roses called rude gesture. And so from now on, whenever I hear that, I'm going to think of Elon Musk, like awesome. Elon Musk is Farah from A Court of Thorn and Roses. But that kind of stuff is what's going on. And it's understandable that people are going to have a stress response. And the way we teach people how to handle it is in many ways totally wrong. So we're going to talk about one of the pillars of dialectical behavior therapy today, about distress tolerance. So if you like this kind of content that doesn't game the YouTube algorithm, I like to keep things mostly chill. I leave my controversial shit for video game stuff because that doesn't really matter very much, not in real terms. Help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. And this new microphone setup looks better here, but man, is it hard to operate with it here. Anyway, neither here nor there. Distress tolerance, okay? Distress tolerance is tolerating distress, not being bothered by it, tolerating that you're bothered, right? It basically, I'll read from this website I have up here. This is from dbt.tools. DBT emphasizes learning to bear pain skillfully because pain and distress are part of life and cannot be entirely avoided. Tolerance is necessary during any behavior change because impulsive behavior would interfere. Distress tolerance is the ability to perceive the environment as it is without demanding that it be different. Some people call this radical acceptance. The thing is that when people say radical acceptance, the odds go way up that they are spewing bullshit because it's woo-woo instead of, recognizing pain's a part of life. Nobody likes it. Sometimes in life, it's the equivalent of, a self-bikini wax. Or lifting heavy, whatever you want, runner's high, all that stuff. The choices you have when something pains you is not feel pain or don't feel pain. Into which life some rain must fall, right? The formula, and this is going to sound kind of Jedi because it is. The Buddhists have this down. The idea of when you feel pain, and I've been doing this a lot lately, when you feel pain, you can choose to accept it, which means it just stays as pain. Okay, that really fucking hurt, That stays as pain. If you don't accept things as they are, then you truly suffer. We know suffering leads to the dark side, right? That is the actual quote. That is it. What is it? Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Suffering leads to the dark side. And this is why when I catch myself approaching hate, time out, gotta work the steps, right? Because you notice again, it says you're trying to avoid impulsive behavior. And that can be exceptionally difficult in the times we're in right now, where impulsive behavior is seen as authentic or honest. And it's not, you know. Um, Impulsive behavior is, at least in people like me, living with CPTSD. PTSD, I normally say, I've started saying CPTSD more because I want to sort of destigmatize it as a thing that, again, is associated with woo-woo. The difference, if you're interested, is that PTSD is a single event that leaves you not able to feel safe, right? CPTSD is an entire fucking childhood that leaves you going, what is this thing we call safety, right? It's recognizing and working with the fact that you did not get the stuff in childhood that every child deserves, right? And acceptance and not fighting against that is a huge part. And you're like, how could you possibly not fight that? It's weird, right? It is the Obi-Wan Kenobi shit. You know, strike me down and I will become more powerful than you can ever imagine. There is this point where you stop fighting for that abusive parent to ever love you, right? You stop fighting for the bully to get their comeuppance. You stop fighting for a do-over from that thing from your past. It's never gonna end any other way. It's, you know, the Miles Morales into the Spider-Verse canon event thing. And whatever terminology you use to accept something that is painful, just do it. 'Cause the thrashing and the kicking and the screaming, just, you know, you can't control the pain. You can't control the suffering. And the hardest thing for a lot of human beings, especially people who were ostracized when they were younger, welcome to the gaming community, right, is this idea that people will think bad things about you based on lies, right? This idea of I have to fight back, I have to defend myself. It's great in a perfect world. We don't live in a perfect world. And, you know, part of the reasons my approaches to things like the whole Hogwarts Legacy debacle, the whole Veilguard shitstorm, all that stuff is like, look, we can scream and yell because we feel excluded by a game. Or we can accept that no game is for us and go and play stuff that we like, right? And this is no shade on the Grand Theft Auto franchise. I just don't understand why GTA is as popular as it is. The GTA era, the GTA 3 era, you know, with all those spin-offs, I always mix them up, but like San Andreas and stuff like that, those I get, you know, but I found GTA 4 really fucking depressing. And they just recycled a lot of concepts from that for LA Noire. And LA Noire was just a prettier game. Like, I like the period piece element. And Grand Theft Auto 5, I just didn't get. I didn't get why people like it. I didn't get why anybody related to any of the characters. They were all kind of awful. And maybe that's the point. All right. Some of the soundtrack was banging. But it's just not my kind of thing. There are other games, if you like cars, that do cars better. You know, Forza games, that kind of stuff. And I know it's easy to say because it's been years about open world, but I'm not the biggest open world fan either. I play them because, well, we didn't have a choice for a while, and it's just my preference, right? And we all have a preference. We can have a preference without saying that everything we don't personally like is bad. And if you can't handle not liking a game that's cool right now, you're going to have a really hard time over the next, whenever the political winds turn against you. And they do. Like, this is starting to feel very much like the Defense of Marriage Act, Don't Ask, Don't Tell era on steroids. As like, Jesus, here we go again. And this is not an attempt to minimize anyone's struggle right now. I don't know how to really support transgender people in the United States right now, but if there's something I can do, I'll do it. It's gonna be fucking rough. And a big part of the reason we got here is that everybody lost the plot, right? Everybody got too focused on the individual little fights and struggling against everything. And collectively, people really lost sight of what was important and what we could control. And that is a big part of distress tolerance and the acceptance element of distress tolerance is, it's friggin' freezing on the day that I'm recording this. We're in part of, the deep freeze. Don't call it a polar vortex. And I woke up this morning and knuckles were like creak, for the last few days, my eyes have been swollen and I don't know why. Some days I will just be super puffed up and it really sucks when I have to go and do like cosplay stuff or anything like that. And I know it's like, oh, my waist is 2 to 3 inches larger than it was yesterday. It's the joys of having an autoimmune disease, right? And then people say, you're hiding behind your disability. And I'm just like, you have no fucking idea. I get up and I do shit anyway. And you do your best. And you have to deal with the cruelty and the judgments and the assumptions of people who are just... I could cure cancer and somebody would say, oh, she just did it because she's a selfish narcissist that wants people to like her, right? Like, it doesn't matter how many things I do that don't have that motivation. It's a fun thing to say. And it does hurt. And people tell me that, oh, you shouldn't say that. That means they know how to hurt you. And that misses the point, right? Because they're doing it in the first place to be mean, right? Even if they believe it, which I don't actually believe they do. They know it's mean. there's an element of deliberateness. So yeah, it hurts because it's supposed to. But what's worse, coming here and lying about it bothering me, or being honest about it and just showing that life goes on, I'll get over it. You know, I've seen too many YouTubers have profound mental health spirals trying to talk tough when they're just being besieged by bullshit. And one of the hardest things about distress tolerance is when you don't know when it's gonna stop. You know, you have to sort of prepare for the fact that these people may not stop for the rest of my life, for the rest of their lives. It's possible. You know, there's that guy that has been convinced that Bob Dylan's songs are about him and going through Bob Dylan's garbage, and Bob Dylan can't do anything about it. And can you imagine, like, coming out and the same freaking guy is going through your garbage again? Like, that's invasive. And there's really nothing you can do if someone is that determined that they don't care about consequences. They don't care enough about consequences to stop, or they don't see that there are consequences because they just blame you for everything they do anyway. They're probably not going to stop. And there are times where, you know, a lot lately, I have felt like a liability because, of course, what do these people do? They troll my mentions, right? And so other people have to deal with bullshit because they dare to talk to me. That's, to me, the hardest part, right? And, oh, you're giving them ammunition. They know it anyway. They know. I've had one person, she's going on 13 years now. And all the other people have just started copying her tactics, while insisting they do not endorse her. They do not support her. You're copying her tactics, and everyone can see it. Stop struggling, right? And that's the thing. There's a bunch of people right now who are just lying about me because they cannot accept the pain of me cutting them off. And it's you know, it's like being a recovering alcoholic at a bar. Seeing that makes it really tough because, yeah, people think you're tougher when you're angry and you're raging, and the problem is it goes on too long and you're not tough anymore. You're scary. And some people don't believe me when I say I have extreme empathy for people who are still caught in that. Because I remember what it was like, and I remember the negative self-talk that convinced me that if I stopped raging against everything, you know, rage against the dying of the light, God, teenage years in that fucking poem, you know, but if I stopped raging, then I'd be nothing. Then I would be defeated. Then I'd have to submit. Then they'd be right about everything. And eventually it just got so bad that it was like, okay, what if they're right about everything? Well, I'm still a human being. And that's when I started seeing a difference between my behavior and theirs. And going, okay, I was angry at them, and I may have thought something nasty about them, and I stop myself from saying it, right? Well, that suggests I'm not this monster that they claim who just likes to hurt people. And that's both a self-soothe tactic, but also there's a type of distress tolerance technique. It's called problem solving. And I'm a little bit hesitant to get into it because problem solving and intellectualizing are not the same thing, because intellectualizing distances yourself from emotions, whereas problem solving is the true stoicism of working through your emotions. And so I think with, the audience for this particular content, that might be the thing to sort of focus on in terms of how do you feel pain without struggling against it? How do you just accept it so it's just pain and not suffering, right? First of all, stop. And that's hard, right? When someone has hurt you so bad, you feel like you've been set on fire. It's really hard to stop and let yourself burn. One of the ironic teachers of this, for me, this is going to sound real weird, but I have a particular allergic reaction to certain things that I start getting tunnel vision and stomach upset and sweating and nausea. And if I don't lie flat, I'm going to pass out and or throw up. Pick your order on that one. And that is something that I kept getting caught by it because I just tried to push through it. And once I fainted on the subway and threw up on myself, and the paramedics, compassionate people that they were, just assumed I was a drunk coming back from a Christmas party. And so instead of treating me like I was having some sort of allergic reaction, left me in the hallway at, was it North York General Hospital? Something like that. For hours. And the doctor who finally talked to me, not only had the paramedics misreported the amount I told them I'd have to drink, but didn't do a blood alcohol test or a breathalyzer or anything like that. And the doctor's like, all right, well, they didn't do it, so we don't know, do we? Like, the doctor believed me after lying there for hours. And he said, this is what I think actually happened to you. It tends to be worse. And this was before I knew I had the autoimmune disease, right? It tends to be worse for some people this time of year because of going in and out, hot, cold. And yeah, it happened in December, January, worst months for me. And you can't push through that kind of attack. You have to stop and you have to lie down or at least squat. You've got to get the blood back to your heart, and you've got to minimize the space between your heart and your lungs. You've got to help your system because your blood pressure is bottoming out. You've got to help your body recover from that sudden, right? Which means stopping, which means recognizing the problem, which means doing the steps to solve the problem, even if it might be a little embarrassing. The last time I got caught, it was at a women in business training seminar, and I had to lie down, and I knew two people there. Everybody else had just met me for the first time. And I'm like lying there with like a cold cloth in my head. Like, I'm okay. Like, it was embarrassing, right? But throwing up on myself would have been embarrassing and gross, right? So you pick. And You work the steps. This is the problem. How do we solve the problem? W5H. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Right. I guess because, I have that journalistic background, still do it. The W5H comes to me naturally. But stopping and problem solving slows down that limbic system biochemical need to do something that the freeze, fight, fawn, or flight response comes from. It short circuits the impulsive behavior. And it helps me a lot. Like stopping instead of having the urge to take the bait. And if I'm making it sound easy, it's not. This is something that there was a literal physical condition that forced me to learn this. So, don't be as dumb as I was. This is where avoiding the all or nothing thinking, the us versus them, the black or white, the splitting, comes into play. I always look at a situation. It's like, what is a benign explanation for this, right? You saw how I did it with the Neil Gaiman thing. Let's take his statement as, let's give him the benefit of the doubt here. Let's read what he's saying. Let's take every word as truth. And when you do that, instead of fighting it, you're like, well, that sort of contradicts. Well, he's pretty much admitting he's kinking it up with the babysitter, multiple babysitters. That in itself is wrong, right? That really makes consent iffy, and it's based on his words, right? Elon Musk, similarly, the ADL response to the whole Elon Musk thing, I get why people are upset about it. It was mealy-mouthed and let's try to be understanding, right? And I understand that anybody who celebrates Hanukkah can't win for losing right now. And the interesting thing about what the ADL said is that they're not wrong, but where was that a year ago, 2 years ago, right? And I do think that it probably was not, I don't think it was a straight up Hitler salute, because if you've seen Elon Musk, he gets very offended at the idea that he's anti-Semitic. He has some anti-Semitic blind spots. He does. But he gets very offended at I have Jewish friends, right? So I don't think he'd knowingly do that because that would violate his self-concept. However, someone who his response, that's weak, that made it seem deliberate. And so many fucking people do this because they struggle, right? They struggle against the pain. They struggle against the embarrassment instead of going, ooh, that looked pretty bad. And I admit, I'm like, oh wow, he's doing the gold mask thing from Elden Ring, right? He's standing there and Langdell and all that stuff. And anybody who did that under those circumstances, I mean, there was a whole thing with Melania's hat as well, which, oh my God, was funny. But the fact that the brim of her hat prevented Trump from kissing her on the cheek at the inauguration. Like, if that was deliberate, I'd rather Melania be president if she's that calculating. Not that I think that's, I mean, that's an awful thing to do if it was deliberate, but lawful evil baller move, right? Maybe she just wanted to witness protection program it. I don't know. Maybe she had a stylist. I mean, we've seen her Christmas decoration. She's very avant-garde. She's got a very severe fashion sense. But she looked great. She looked like, to me, and this is praise, okay? She looked like she was going to throw off that coat at any moment and have this like PVC cat suit underneath it, look vaguely like a nun's habit, and the two giant machine guns, and just like, that's what she looked like, right? Like, fierce. She looked good. Maybe not good in an appropriate way for the occasion, but she looked good, right? And that's the thing. When I look at that and I look at, to me, saying, yeah, Elon Musk probably didn't mean to do it, and he's too insecure to go, I see what it looks like, but it wasn't that. He had to be a hoo. To me, that's more vulnerable than if he did it deliberately. I can see him covering that up, right? When you stop and you slow down and you don't feel the need to react and show what a good person you are, by calling it out, you stop that impulsive behavior, right? And it's hard, right? Because then you get people piling on you. Hogwarts Legacy, bad ally. And that's how we got here, right? People got so sick of the left that they actually thought Trump was a better alternative. And you can go, what's wrong with those people? As long as you want, they still thought he was a better alternative. And yes, you have to persuade low information voters. You do, right? And you're not gonna persuade low information voters by having a running trauma response that's just full of impulsive behavior. And here's the thing about Elon, right? When Rolling Stone is running articles about how white supremacist groups were very, very happy that he did that, they said amazing things are happening already. If he really didn't intend to encourage them, he's a father of how many kids? He knows that, you shouldn't encourage a kid's bad behavior. You'd think he'd say something. He's not. That we can judge, right? We can take him at his word that it wasn't intentional and still think his behavior after the fact was shitty, right? That's how you validate, but don't agree. Right there. And you can only do that if you slow it down, accept that things hurt, and practice that problem solving. Remind yourself of your goals. Figure out whether having that, emotional junk food of lashing out now is going to help you achieve your goal or not. I mean, I'm going to have to curb some of my fun behaviors on Twitch because I think come on, all that shit, jousting with people who show up and act like assholes. People are using that to depict me as having an anger management problem, and the temporary fun isn't worth that. And then people go, oh, but you're letting them win. You're changing your behavior to suit them. No, I'm not changing my behavior because of them. I'm changing my behavior because I'm looking at the realities of the situation, knowing I'm just doing that to create entertaining content for the people that are watching. But from now on, I'm just going to block people. And I don't like that, but it's better than getting painted as a rageaholic. And being called that hurts. And because again, I'm pretty sure the people saying it know it's not true. Because if it was, they'd have gotten a face full of it from me by now. But it hurts. And it hurts because these people, at one point, I considered all of them very dear friends. And they threw it in my face claiming I didn't care. You know? Blamed me for all of it. That hurts. It really hurts. I know it's not true. I know the reason I put myself in a situation where they could depict me that way is because I did care very much. And them saying I didn't doesn't make it true, right? So what do I do about it? Move on. You know, I do have to figure out next steps. I think I have to change my approach to just taking it because free speech. But, you know, at the end of the day, I ultimately have to be able to feel good about how I responded, even though I can never expect my response to be perfect, right? And that's distress tolerance in a nutshell. So over the next little while, politically, because shit's going to hit the fan in Canada too. It's okay to say it sucks. I say, and it's not therapy. Ignoring negatives isn't being positive. You know, the mnemonics on It's Not Therapy that are designed to get, because it's listening, designed to, you know, repetition retrains the brain. One of them's taken at an account making fun of all of that, and they're probably watching this, so I saw it. Not bad parody, mean-spirited, but 6 out of 10. There were, it's funny, I read it, it's like, no, I would have told that joke differently. No, they went down instead of up. Oh, no, way too cheap. Needed to be more subtle on that one. Like, I'm just separating from it and going and editing it. And it's like, yeah, because they wanted to bother me. And again, I can recognize the cruelty and decide I can treat this like it's a total stranger. And people have the right. I mean, God, there's Taylor Swift parodies and, you know, Obama parodies, and anybody who tries to do anything remotely good in remotely a big way gets haters. That's another way to, and the thing you got to be careful about that is that you cannot just switch off any criticism as haters. And that's where it becomes really hard when you're being bombarded by negativity, you know? The haze of pain does make it hard to listen when somebody said something hurtful for your own good. And there have been a share of comments that hurt, but they were for my own good of late. And every time I thought that, like, just somebody said something that really stung, but I knew they were trying to help. It's just like, and I needed to hear it. It's like, oh yeah, somebody who freaks out whenever anybody challenges her, said she's wrong. Yeah, you know, that moment of bitterness made me go, yeah, they're wrong about me. They are. People who go to that as a starting assumption are telling on themselves. It means they themselves think this is such a common affliction that they can fling it at somebody and there's a chance it's plausible. My problem is I know I have the other problem, and that's what people reminded me of that stung right now, you know? Because it felt like being kicked when I was down, even though, one, I wasn't showing how really down I was, and two, they were right. And as shitty as it's been, and as shitty as the next 4 years are gonna be, that moment of recognizing, like, look at what I did there, right? Things were shit, and I just felt kicked. But I handled it fairly well. That's a win, right? And that's where the self-compassion element of distress tolerance is a really practiced skill. Really practicing telling those messages that will help you instead of the messages that will not. We can't control the Supreme Courts. We can't directly control Congress. People had their chance. They voted. Elections matter. Right. I'm girding my loins for Prime Minister Poilievre up here in Canada. Good Lord. It's not the guy's a conservative, right? I live in a conservative riding. 2 conservative ridings, both federal and provincial. Conservative politicians aren't all bad. Lately, conservative politicians have been more responsive than the liberals that I've reached out to about certain things. But I just have issues with the way Poilievre is running things. But I put up on social media, mantra, one less day that Donald Trump's in office, And the thing is, there's always another Trump. Not quite as spectacular as him, but there's always another guy like that, right? There's always another girl bully. There's always another self-important asshole. These people are not going to just stop existing. And it's a question of, what do you do? Everyone's different. Sometimes it's like, yeah, whatever. They're in the way of my goal. I got to figure out how to negotiate it. And that's what a lot of people are doing with Trump. And good luck to them. I've never seen that work in the Trump orbit. The number of people, who tried to use him for their own means that ended up in jail or disgraced. Matt Gaetz. Right? You got to watch people like that. Like, look at what happens to the people around that person. Is that a pond you want to swim in, or do you want to eat out? Right? And walking away is valid. Checking out is valid. Not reading the news is valid. You got to live your life, A trans person living in the southern U.S. right now does not need to be told what's going on in the news. It directly affects them, right? Give people the chance to get away from being conscious all the time. Because here's the thing, right? If you stay up for 24 hours, you're going to start hallucinating, right? Everybody needs to sleep sometimes. And, the whole raising awareness, you can overwhelm people. The whole, why don't you care? Compassion fatigue, compassion overwhelm are real things. You got to give people that space. You got to give people that time. If the people at Star Wars had just given Gina Carano a few minutes, I think things would have turned out very differently. We don't solve problems by press, overwhelm. Give yourself time to breathe. Give other people time to breathe. Not every fight is a fight to the death. Most aren't. And if you treat everything like a fight to the death, you're going to end up losing people. You're going to end up alone. That's not necessarily the worst thing. The recognition that you drove people away, that you actually did deserve it. It wasn't them. It was you. That's suffering, right? That's what you want to avoid. Take it from somebody who had to battle back from profoundly symptomatic trauma responses, right? It takes work at first, and it doesn't happen overnight. Every little bit you do better, recognize that and give yourself some credit for it. It's not going to happen all at once. You know, the best friends, you look for the people who will tell you that you screwed up, who will tell you the truth, who will not say it's okay when it's not, but who will also cheer with you when you really do something right. Those are the people you know you can trust, not the people that shine you on, not the people that go, it's okay when it's really not the ones that go, I understand, and then don't talk to you for a week. The people who go, nope, I'm not, take a walk. But you come back, you talk about it, you figure out a path forward, something you can both agree to, and then when you do start doing better, they may cheer even louder than you. Those are the people we look for going forward, not the people blowing smoke up your ass. We want supportive spaces, not safe spaces. That's always what the standard should have been. All right. Help support this channel if you like this thing. Remember, I don't game the algorithm, so your support is essential. Patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who use but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. If you're in the Toronto area, check out the Unbirthday Ball, March 15th. We'd love to see you there. Thanks for watching, and I close off for a very special person like this all the time. Thanks for watching, and be well.